As we near the 2020 election, social media companies are making changes to their policies to fix mistakes pointed out during the previous election cycle. Facebook has announced it'll be ending commissions for employees who sell political ads and will also be banning ads that tell users not to vote. They're also working on putting together an independent oversight committee with the power to take down any posts. Twitter has announced it'll be alerting users when a politician's tweet violates its standards, and it'll be graying out the content. The user will still be able to see if the content, if they click on it. Joining us right now to discuss these preparations and more is Alex Kantrowitz, senior technology reporter at BuzzFeed, also our guest host, Ed Lee, this morning. Good morning to both of you. Alex, how much of a difference is this going to make in Washington right now?
Well, I think that it's going to show that these companies are trying to do something. We all know that the federal government is bearing down on the big tech companies. Twitter seemed to have escaped that a little bit, but as we come closer to 2020, that's subject to change. I think this is a chance for them to say, hey, we're doing something, when lawmakers are going out there and trying to make names for themselves by being tough on the social media companies. Ultimately, how much does this do from a practical standpoint? I think pretty little. But it's something that they can take into the offices in Washington and say, hey, we're trying.
Right. Ed, that's what's going on here. This is not, actually, this is built, I mean, all these programs are built to appease and placate.
What can I do to get them off my back, right?
Exactly. My question is, does it do that, though?
I think it does a little bit. It's large increment. I agree with Alex. I think it, practically speaking, I don't know that it does a ton. I think longer term, Facebook, Twitter, all these guys, they really don't want this responsibility. They just don't want this on them. And I'm curious to get Alex's take on this. I think the most interesting thing right now that Facebook is attempting to do is this idea of a Supreme Court that will decide, a separate body that will decide what is or isn't within their policies and what the policy should be.
Alex, why don't they just say we just won't accept any of this kind of advertising?
I think that's exactly what they should do. I am shocked they continue to take political advertising. I mean, if you think about it, it's a low single-digit % of the revenue. And all it does, so this stuff was initially served as a case study to advertisers to show, hey, this is how effective our political advertising is. And now we all know how problematic that is. So I do think that the only reason they're continuing to accept political advertising, well, there's probably two reasons. One is ego, and two is, hey, it actually is a pretty good case study for advertisers elsewhere, and they're willing to take the blow.
But I think the flip side, Alex, is the conundrum is if you said no advertising, then you're going to get A, into some kind of freedom of speech argument. B, online, if you can advertise on, if Facebook, Twitter, and Google said, you know what, no mas, we're out of the business, what would you do if you were a political advertiser wanting to get to people,
but you can
bigger
still
new generation?
This would be, well, that's it. I think Melissa's exactly right. That's the bigger context here, right? Like every post on Facebook is an ad. Right? You, as a political entity, can create your own page and distribute them, disseminate them, and get your followers to share them as much as possible.
Organically.
Exactly. So I think that the activity won't stop on Facebook. It's just your ability to boost it, to make it more visible to the general population, could go away. And even still, you're going to attract followers. You're going to attract that message is still going to get out there through social media. It's just you're not going to directly pay for it.
Alex, you're making an interesting point about the share button on Facebook and how in the last elections that helped proliferate fake news, et cetera. It's still there. I mean, that seems like an even bigger risk than just, political ads.
Yeah, all these changes we talked about at the beginning of the segment, the way that they're going to handle advertising, I think that's just window dressing. I think the real issue that we need to look at is whether or not Facebook should continue to have that share button. Maybe it doesn't want to have it on political posts. There was no share button during the 2012 election. There was one during the 2016 election, or at least the quick share, the reshare, that you can just hit a tap and the content goes to your news feed. So if I see a post that says Hillary Clinton's a space alien, it's going to be much easier for me to just take no thought and hit that share button versus copy and paste the link and decide to share it to my followers. The share button removes that hesitation that you have before you push content out. And that's why we've seen this proliferation of fake news and outrage. And it doesn't matter all the policies you put in place to deal with that in the aftermath. What you really should do is address the actual machinery that makes it so. And I think that's something that we need to have a conversation about heading into this new election is, Alex, does that share button belong?
Alex, 20 seconds. Do you think that the government is either going to break up or meaningfully regulate Facebook or Twitter or the other social media companies in the next, we'll call it 3 years?
No, I don't have any confidence in the government to do anything meaningful to these companies. We see the size of the FTC fine. It's not so big. A lot of people out there are trying to make a name for themselves.
Right.
But no, there's not
Okay.
going to be any breakup, at least in the next 3 years.